I'm April from Sew Local Stitch Lounge, and today we're going to make this sweet little travel pillow. So we have about 0.4 meters of minky. We have thread, some embroidery floss that's cotton, a few pieces of wool felt, our instructions which give us the choice of making our travel pillow with either a cat or a bear, ears and face, and then we have some stuffing, and then over here we have supplies that are really handy to have, which are tape, fabric scissors, paper scissors, pins, something to mark with, and something to measure with. Our first step is to cut out our pattern pieces. We have 2 halves of the pillow, and we're going to cut them out around the edges and tape them together. They're a free pattern download that we're starting with as our base from treasury.com. Okay, so we have our long piece of minky fabric. We're going to take it and fold each end towards the middle. You can take your pattern piece, you're going to line it up with one of the folded edges. You're just going to cut out around your pattern piece, not cutting on this edge where this fold line is, because we want this to be double the size that it is right now. And we're going to do that, and then we're going to cut out the entire thing again over here. Okay, so we have both of our pieces cut out now, so you can remove your pins and open up your fabric. Now we're going to cut out our ears, so either the bear or the cat ears. I'm going to do the cat. You're going to use your leftover fabric, and we need 4 of these. I'm going to cut 2 at a time. So I'm going to fold a piece of fabric in half, pin this in place. You're going to take the minky pieces and you're going to put them right sides together. So if you're making the teddy bear, you'll be cutting out the ears that are the rounder shape. And then from the paper pieces, you need your muzzle, cheek, nose, and eye templates. You're going to take your bear muzzle and put it over your white felt fabric. You can pin it in place and cut that out. The cheeks, you'll need 2 of those. So you can cut both of those out. And then with the black felt, you'll do your bear nose. And then you'll need 2 of these little eyes. So you would cut those all out of the felt pieces. And if you're doing the cat, you're going to have the pointy ears out of your minky, and then you just need to use the pink felt to cut out 1 nose piece, like this. If you're making the bear, the first thing that's going to go in place is the muzzle, and we want to make sure that we're leaving room for a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides here. So I'm going to put it around the middle. And then if you want, you can follow. I just made up this little diagram, or you can play around with it. It really changes the expression and the look on the face if you move the eyes around and the cheeks and that kind of thing. And remember, it will have ears as well, and also a little mouth if you want. So once you have it set up the way that you like it, you can use some temporary glue, some fabric glue to glue everything down in place, or you can use pins. Then you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're going to sew around each piece. Once everything is sewn in place, you can take a fabric marker or a pencil and you're just going to draw out how you want the mouth to look. If you're using a fabric marker, you'll be able to erase it with water. And then we're going to hand stitch this part. If you're doing the cat, then you're just using the little cat nose. And this you can sew down by machine or by hand. And then you can use my diagram if you'd like to make the same kind of cat face that I planned out, or you can make something else up. So on this one, after this is sewn down, we're just going to draw the mouth and whiskers and the eyes in place, and then we'll stitch those by hand. So when I do applique like this, where I'm attaching a piece of fabric onto another piece, I like to use a zigzag stitch. So on my machine, that's number 8. And I'm going to make the stitches a little bit tighter together. And if you use a zigzag stitch, you want to line up the applique piece that you're putting onto your fabric. You want the edge of it to be right in the middle of the presser foot. That way your zigzags are going to zig onto this and zag over the edge. Okay, so it's time to draw our design. So I'm going to do just a little mouth coming down here.
And then some whiskers.
And then I did these up here to kind of do markings on the cat. And then eyes. And the eyes, I'm going to use where the whiskers start as the point of the beginning of the eye. And it's going to start a little bit below here, you'll see. Okay, so this is embroidery floss. It's 100% cotton, and it's actually 6 strands of floss together. We don't need all of those, but we're going to start by cutting around an arm's length. So we're just going to double that. So you're going to pinch all of the floss, grab just one single strand, and you continue to pinch while you pull out the rest. This single one, sorry. And then the rest stays here and hopefully does not get knotted because you did it this awesome way. So I have 2 strands of floss taken out, one at a time. And now we're going to thread our needle with the 2. We're going to match up our 4 threads and make a double knot on the end. There's one, and you want your second knot to line right up on top of that one. Now we're going to start from the back of the project. And we'll start with these 3 lines at the top. They're nice and easy. So we come from underneath so that the knot stays hidden in the back. Pull it all the way up until your knot is against the back of your fabric. And these are just going to be long lines like this. So we're going to go right down at the end of our line. And then we're going to come up at your next line and go back down. And you want it to be taut but not so tight that it's pulling your fabric in. You want your fabric to be able to sit nice and flat still. Then we're going to come up the next one, go here. So we're just making 3 really, really big stitches. And then we'll do a knot in the back And to do that, we're gonna grab a little bit of thread, or a little bit of fabric, sorry, and pull your thread through, and then you're gonna put your needle through this loop and then pull tight. And we'll do that once more. Go through a little piece of fabric or thread, and as you're pulling your loop, you put your needle inside the loop and then finish pulling tight. Then we can move on to our next piece, which is the eye. And for this, we're gonna do a back stitch. So I'm starting 1 stitch length up further than the beginning, and I'm going back to the beginning right here for my stitch. And then again, I'm going up and leaving 1 whole stitch length in between. And then I'm going backwards and I'm going inside the stitch hole from the last stitch. Okay, so I did all this part of the eye. Now I'm just gonna do the eyelashes. And for those, I'm gonna do a back stitch again. So I'm starting away at the end of the eyelash and then coming down back to the eye. And then this one, I'm gonna make it in 2 because it's a longer one. There we go. Then we'll knot the back. I'm pretty much out of thread, so I'll re-thread my needle and then start working on the other eye and then the whiskers and the mouth. Now that we have most of the face done, I'm gonna add some little dots here. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to, but this is a special stitch. It's called French knot. So the way we do this, you come up from the back, and then you take your needle and you wrap your thread around it a few times, and then you go back down into the same hole. You're gonna hold this thread with one hand and pull your needle through with the other hand. And then you can let go, and it should make just a little knot right here. And that's how you can make cute little dots. It takes some practice. I know it looks easy, but everyone usually has to try it a bunch of times before they can get it. But go ahead and give it a try. You can try it on a scrap piece of fabric too first. So you're wrapping your thread, going back in the hole, and you have to really continue to hold this thread so it's nice and tight. And you're using your other hand to pull the needle in. There's another one. I'm going to do 3 on each side. Like that. Okay, so it's time to sew your ears. So if you have the cat ears, they're going to look like this. If you have the teddy bear ears, they're going to be very similar, just rounded. Either way, you're sewing up the top and leaving the whole bottom edge open. And we're gonna go for, your seam allowance can just match up with the edge of your fabric. And make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end. Now you're gonna take your little ears and we're just gonna trim the top. You can just cut that right off. Make sure not to cut into your threads. And then that's just gonna help it have a nicer corner, and then you can turn it right side out. So we have our cat ears. Then you can decide where you want them on your cat. So they can go farther down if you like, or really close together. I think I like mine right here. So once you find the spot where you'd like them, you're gonna flip them so that they're facing down and that the edge of the pillow and the edge of the ears are lined up together. And then you can either pin or clip those into place. We'll go to our sewing machine and we're just gonna sew across this top edge on each ear to hold them down. All right, again, back stitch at the beginning, back stitch at the end, and we'll be using the edge of the fabric lined up with the presser foot for a seam allowance. Okay, so we have our cute little stuffy coming together. And now you're gonna take the other half of your pillow and you're gonna put them so that they're right sides together. So the nice soft minky sides looking at each other. And you're gonna line it up everywhere. We're gonna take a marking pen and we're gonna measure so that we have a 4-inch hole on one of the sides. You wanna make sure that it's on a side. A nice flatter place is better. It's harder to stitch it up nicely if it's on a big curve. So I'm going to use my mat to measure. So here's 1 and then 4 inches. So this is going to be the no-sew zone in here. And I'm going to mark it on each side with a wonder clip just to help me see it a little bit better. Alright, so now we'll go to our sewing machine and we'll start at one of our marked spots, so all the way around until we get to the other side, leaving a gap. So we're going to backstitch at the beginning, backstitch at the end, and we're using 1/2 inch seam allowance this time. Okay, so now right on this curve, we're gonna go in here and just snip, making sure not to catch our sewing. We're just gonna make a bunch of little snips in here, and it's going to allow the fabric to stretch properly when it's turned the right way after. Then we're just gonna trim down the seam allowance a little bit, not where you're hand sewing, just on the rest. We'll cut it in half. So it's been all trimmed down. The only part that's not trimmed is where the opening is, so we can sew that shut after. And it's time to turn it right side out. And then now we can stuff it. This bag holds a lot of stuffing. It's kind of amazing. So grab a handful, a smallish handful to start, and you're going to stuff all the way at the farthest end, all the way to the bottom. So if you start to run out of stuffing, you can kind of loosen it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be really firm, it can be nice and soft. So cute. For the end, we're going to hand stitch this closed with a ladder stitch. So you can go ahead and thread your hand sewing needle with thread that you were using on your sewing machine. So I'm going to make sure that the raw edges are tucked in. And I'm actually just going to put a couple of clips to hold it that way for me. So I have a needle threaded with a knot on the end, and I'm going to start my stitch up at the top and come out ahead a little bit, and then the knot will just be hidden inside. And for the ladder stitch, you're going up one side, and then you're crossing over, putting your needle in right across from your last stitch, and then going up this side, so that you have a straight line kind of going between here. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. Now I'm going in here, straight across from this stitch. And you should see these look kind of like the rungs of a ladder. They're just going straight across the fabric. And then I'm going to go in here and up this side. And then every few stitches, you're going to pull tight, and all of your stitches should get pulled in and you can't see them. It's a really nice way to finish your sleeve. So I have a few more stitches here you can see, and then you can work this up. The help part. Like we did earlier when we were hand stitching, and pull tight. And we'll do this twice to make sure it's a double knot. David?